Good evening, Team Pallatrax. Season's greetings, I suppose. I hope you've all had a absolutely fantastic Christmas. Loads of goodies coming your way from Santa. Probably everybody got some kind of fishing bits and pieces in their sacks. So what did you get? Did you get anything decent? I've seen loads of posts on Facebook, lots of very happy anglers out there. I should imagine the trade's very happy, as it would appear that lots of people are buying all and anything. So yes, so hopefully this is going to work. It's always a challenge, as you know. Hi Rob, that's a good sign. Somebody's managed to get a comment up there. Hope you're well, Rob. Adam, well done, Adam, for catching your fish in the cold and the gloom and the doom. Congratulations. I'm assuming it was on Crave. A nice new spot rod to try out on Wednesday. Fantastic, fantastic. Matt Woodman, evening, Pom. Hope you're well and great Christmas likewise. Yeah, it was very, very quiet, to be fair, in the end. Hi Ian, Glenn, good evening, Neil Watson, Les Bunyan, Season's greetings, Miles, thank you. So quite a few people popping in, which is fantastic. Isn't it miserable out there? I tell you what, I shouldn't say it, but the way to look at it is in a couple of days' time, we'll be able to say, end of next month, it's March. So that's the way I hold on to it, but I don't like these cravers ever. Well done, yeah, I don't like these dark, long days. Evening, Tracy Peter. Robert, good evening. How did you get on today? See you were out and about on the banks. Good evening, Keith Powell. I hope you're well, matey. Had a good Christmas. Paul Bilcott. Alan, good evening. Hope you and Anna are very well. Looking forward to seeing you down here in the new year. Good evening, Stephen. Quiet Christmas. I like a quiet Christmas. Yeah, to be quite honest, I've done absolutely nothing. I've literally taken several days off work and just chilled out and watched a load of rubbish on Netflix. And yeah, Charlie, good evening. Colin, good evening. Looking forward to speaking tomorrow. So a few people have popped in. Just to let you know, I'm just going to swing around. It was a bit chilly and no luck, but good to be out. Yeah, that's what I just said to Tinny, Robert. I said we should have gone out today and walked the lakes. We were all sitting inside all John Wall, good evening. Hope you had a good Christmas. Looking forward to the new year. Yeah, no, I think we all are. But you get a last gasp chance. This is the Christmas competition, the team exclusive competition. Loads of goodies there to be won. So it's up there on the team page. So do please have a look and enter. It's an easy one, as all the competitions are. On that as well, hi Stephen. Tony King, hope you're well, my friend. Where is it? Here it is. So, as always, any news on the work party at the moment? To be honest, it's the top of my list there. I sorted out a list to get sorted, so bear with me, Ian, bear with me. Absolute belter of a prize. Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Worth a few pennies, that lot. And so yeah, bear with me on that, Ian. Hope you had a good break. Are you back from Australia or wherever it was you were? Anyway, just to let you know, the competition or the prize draw for tonight for the team page here at live feed draw. A couple of packets of the awesome grips in the curved shank, a little Team Pallatrax sticker. And Adam, you'll be gagging to win this, a Crave booster, and something we'll be touching on again because it's some of the questions I've had tonight. It's all about winter hook baits and things like that. So there is the Crave Reactive, the new reactive range, so super boosted. So if you'd like to be in with a shout of winning that, all you've got to do is ping yes, the word yes, to my Facebook Messenger page, Simon Pomeroy. So just ping the word yes, as always, and somebody will win that. Let me just have a quick slurp. It's not alcohol. It's fizzy water. I know, it's not good. It's not good. But good evening, Lee. Welcome. So, got a few questions, but as is always, I can hear people have found my message. That's on my other phone, pinging away there. I've had a few questions, and basically they're pretty much all around the same thing. So, if you've got any questions, as the feed goes, anything you want discussing, anything. It's a good place to ask questions. There's lots of depth in here amongst people who are within the team. And it's safe, so you're not going to get any grief or any of that rubbish that you do see on Facebook sometimes. It's just a nice place to... okay, you tell me your funny story about Crave, John. I look forward to that. Hope you're well, mate. Hope you're well. I know you've been battling it somewhat. So anything you want discussed, I mean, anything to do with fishing, it can to do with your own thoughts, pick my brains, what's left of them. You know, obviously I've been in the trade for 30 years now, fisheries, shops, you know, I've kind of been involved with lots of elements. And obviously I fish for myself. Don't pretend to be the best anglers, but I'd like to think there's a few hidden gems within the grey matter up there that I can share all the time. Obviously very, very keen to get more people involved in fishing and catching more fish. So hope you had a good Christmas. Thank you, Owen. Likewise, same to you and your family. And who's looking forward to 2026? So glad for notifications. I forgot what day it is. I know, it's terrible, isn't it, Anthony? Evening, Paul. Evening, Paul. So I'll go to the first one. It's from we all want to catch. So at this time of year, what would be your first choice of fish to target? Well, I'll cover that for Ian. It would be predators, to be quite honest. You're in with such a good shout of catching predators this time of year compared to any other fish in my mind. Grayling on the river, you know, they're a good winter fish, and don't get me wrong, you'll catch the majority of fish in the winter, but it's very, very few and far between. You know, fish like catfish and tench really do close down. Carp, you know, again, they will close down as soon as that temperature gets past like about 39 degrees. You know, fish do really tend to start to shut down, but that's not to mean you won't catch fish. And it's certainly you know, it keeps you going. You know, I've had some really good carp sessions in the winter. I've never done very well for things like tench. I've done okay for barbel, but the fish that, if you know, and because it doesn't take as long, you know, we drag all this kit out for, you know, a few hours of daylight in the winter to go carp fishing. When with predatory fishing, you can just take a rod and a lure and a net and a small mat and off you trundle and up and down the canal or round the local river or anything like that. So I would always advise, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this, I know that carp fishing is kind of the biggest kind of pull in angling, but I think we are in danger, though people like you know, Savage Gear and stuff like that are oh, hang on, so I'll come back to that in a second, Glenn. You know, we're very focused on carp, but in the winter especially, you can have some great fun. Pike, zander, perch, all of these fish, and especially if you just look at what Savage Gear, Fox Rage, people like that, it's not particularly expensive, in all honesty. Obviously the baits aren't consumables, so you'll keep on catching the same fish or same different species on the same lures and things like that. So if you said to me today, right, you had to go and catch a fish pom and you're going to load the odds in your kind of corner, it would definitely be predatory. And that's, to be quite honest, we should be out there on my lakes at the moment going for the perch, but I need to get a bit of enthusiasm together, I think. Let's have a look. What's this, Glenn's Martin? We are told that what best food baits for was wondering what the worst thing to use is. It's a difficult one. I mean, if the thing is, if we're talking majority of fish, we'll just pick up out of curiosity. So just ring fencing, what's the sense? Do look at predatory fishing. It's not difficult. If you do go pike fishing, I'd always suggest you go with somebody who has handled pike before. But really, really great fun, especially in the winter months, and great fun just for a few hours, just to get out of the house. And you can always fish with high expectation, especially if you go to good spots, you know, like marinas on canals or features and things like that. So, But going back to Glenn, what's the worst thing to use is, I mean, where I come from, both as an angler and a fishery owner, is anything that's not good for fish. Is the main thing. The trouble is, fish will pick up out of curiosity, out of instinct, out of whatever, anything, as we see on plastic sweetcorn, plastic maggots, bits of foam on zig rigs. But the thing about those, they're classed as lures. If you think anything on the hair is still classed as a lure, because the fish can't eat it. And I think that's what gives the wrong impression to many people, who say, well, look, they're obviously eating my bait because they picked up the one on the hair. And that isn't strictly true, and there's loads of underwater footage showing you that, you know, a fish might pick up one bait, but it's not eating the other baits, or it'll pick up 3 or 4 baits, boilies predominantly, stuff like that, and then it'll spit it out because it recognises it not as food. So that's the main thing. The worst thing you can use is something that's not going to be good for the fish and for the environment we're fishing in. And so you've always got to be careful about ingredients. Going further to that, and again, you will catch fish on it, don't dispute it, and it can be very efficient baits, is high oil content pellets. Now the thing is, halibut pellet, trout pellet, the name gives it away. They're for halibut, big fat sea fish, and for farming, fish farming purposes, and the same with trout. Again, it's for fish farming purposes. So they've got oil content higher than 15%, which again is good, ironically, to attract fish, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's not good for the fish, the health of fish. It's like us all eating McDonald's and sweeties all day long, it's not basically designed for coarse fish. You know, that's why you can get carp pellet or you can get coarse fish pellet. You know, they're designed, both trout, you know, or game fish and sea fish like the halibut. They don't have a digestive tract, they actually have a stomach, so it's totally different. It's like, you know, chalk and cheese. It's like saying that you'd feed a pig the same as what you feed a camel, because they've got 4 feet. You know, it doesn't work that way. But I think, you know, a lot of times we forget that there's so many different species, and they actually are physically made up. You know, we can assume that everything under the water is the same because it's a fish, and we don't say the same on land, do we? So there we go. So hopefully that makes sense, Glenn. But you know, there's some things out there that I see that I'm you know, I do despair. When you see, you know, a kilo of boilies for £3 retail, you are really thinking, yes, you will catch fish, and you see people saying, oh, I've caught fish on it and things like that, but they'll catch fish more out of luck, I would say, than anything else. Just fish is there, it's hungry, it's inquisitive, it's picked it up. But like I say, never forget, just because it's picked up your bait doesn't mean it's going to eat all the freebies, and those are the things that will do the damage, without a shadow of a doubt. Right, a few questions. So Glenn was talking about carp, so yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Hi Stephen, hope you're well. Steve Thompson, season's greetings to you. Rod's saying, the lake I'm going to on Wednesday has a miss of carp and pike in the same lake, so I'm hoping for one last fish of the year to beat my last 4 blank trips. Be positive, Rob. Be positive. Fingers and everything else crossed for you, mate. All I can say is do look out. If you can see any signs of fish, go to them. Don't expect them to come to you, especially in the winter. I'd say that all year round. I say it on here loads and loads of times. You know, there is that kind of, I don't know, belief, I suppose, that's purported out there, pushed out there, that fish will come to you. It doesn't work like that. You know, it's in some scenarios when you're stuck in a swim because it's a match, or, you know, you have to have a swim on a lake or whatever. But outside of that, if you're allowed to move and you see fish moving, do move. You know, your odds will go up, you know, ridiculous percentage. At the end of the day, they're moving a lot slower, if they're moving at all. So if they're all held up in one area, you've got a concentration of fish and you've got more chance of nicking one out. If you're going to sit there and think, oh, they're going to come to me, you'll be sitting there an awful long time. Like I said, you know, you're better off walking on water for 23 hours and fishing for an hour in a good swim than sitting for 24 hours in a bad swim. You know, find the fish, find the fish. And though it's more difficult in the winter, you know, there is still signs that, you know, it could be the birds showing on top of the water because there's bait down there that's been left historically. It could be, you know, local knowledge from anglers on the banks. But more, the main thing is if you see a fish move, and it could be a pike or a perch striking silvers, or it could just be a big old carp lolloping around near the surface. You know, at the very least, cast at them. But you're better off being closer to them than further away for bite indication, things like that. And this time of year, do be hitting those single beeps. Look at that line, watch that line or coming off the rod tip. If it starts picking up or dropping back in the old days, we used to use swing tips, and that was the only indication. We weren't waiting for alarms to rattle off and things like that. So, you know, yes, you might have to recast if there's nothing there, but the amount of times I've hit just the smallest of bites, I suppose, the smallest of indication, and there's been a fish hanging on the end. So never forget that rod. Good luck though, mate. Would you still look in the warmer areas of lakes for predators? This is from Ian. Would you still look in the water? Well, yeah. I mean, you know, when you've got warmer water, you've got more chance of fish movement, and that includes the food of the predatory fish. I mean, I can remember as a kid, on the Trent, we used to fish matches on the Trent, and wherever there was the outlets from the power stations, they were always the hot swims in the winter, because you had warm water coming in and everything was gravitating towards it. So, you know, just a bit of sunshine on a shallow bay, you can actually get fish moving. And you see it yourself, don't you? You'll be sat, you know, it's cold, and then you'll see a hatch in the middle of, you know, January, February, but it will just be in a hot area out of the wind. And I always look at what's happening on the bank is very much like what's happening under the water. You know, we've got the daffodils coming out down here already. You know, these things, so there's signs already that things are starting to move and change, and if you adapt to those changes on the day. But I think, you know, warmer water areas are still, you know, it's always going to be a gamble in the winter. But things like that would make a difference. It's like, you know, spring water is warmer than groundwater. So water coming in from a spring, for example, again, that can bring oxygenated water in. It can bring food in because it's coming down through the spring. And potentially it's going to be warmer water there. So again, these kind of little things, they're not, you know, of course you're having to make an assumption, but through circumstantial evidence. And these things can work because it's all about ultimately being on the right spot. You know, if you're on the right spot, you're taking away a lot of the kind of problems. Then it's down to, you know, the skill on the day, how you're setting up, how you're presenting, what bait you're using, etc., etc. So I would certainly gravitate to the warmer areas if possible, and it's more comfortable. Where are we going? Evening Darren, evening John. Tom, has Graham Pullen been down to your place yet? No, I spoke to Graham, if anybody knows, Totally Awesome Fishing, Graham Pullen, and I had an email from him just before Christmas about him coming down, so hopefully we'll see him come down and have a play at Ashmansworthy Pools. Where did we send yes, please? Okay, I'll just do that because there's a few more people. Tonight's live feed draw is couple of packets of the extraordinary and unique grips in the Kershank, a nice Team Pallatrax sticker, Crave Reactive range, let's talk about that again in a minute, and some Crave boosters. So if you're in with a shout or want to be in with a shout winning that, all you've got to do is send yes, the word yes, to my Facebook page, Simon Pomeroy. So there you go, hopefully. There you go, James is on the ball as usual. A few people there, thanks for that. Just got back from blanking. Oh no, Callum, what are you doing, mate? It happens this time of year. It does happen this time of year. What's Matthew? Sorry I'm late, just finished my third Christmas dinner. I'm actually meeting Mr. Rice at some stage tomorrow to put the rods out. I do have a meeting in the day, but we will definitely have a bit of a fish. Right. Steve Bryan, what is the strangest bait you've ever tried? Oh, I suppose the strangest bait to many people, and the most successful bait, is the cork ball. You know, so many people have said to me, hey, you're not going to catch on a cork ball. And once you lace it with a bit of flavour, but I must admit, over the years, especially in my old lakes, we used to try all kinds of weird and wonderful things, you know, just to see if we can get a bite, like a bit of carrot and things like that. But outside of that, like I say, the thing that a lot of people would just go, well, you know, why are you catching on a bit of cork? And I'm catching on the flavour, and the cork's just adhering, you know, the flavour's adhering to that. But that's probably that's in some ways the most controversial bait I regularly use, and I regularly catch fish on it, and most people would never use it in all their time of fishing. When the irony, I suppose, if you actually did a time and motion, and this is for carp fishing, the amount of time and the amount of fish I've caught on using the corkball tactic compared to sitting on the bottom outstrips it by, you know, huge percentage, much higher percentage. And don't forget, and again, this is a bit of a strange one to a lot of people, and I can prove it, there's some awful old video out there of me back in the day, you know, fly fishing on the surface in the depths of winter. You know, fish will, especially like Ian was saying, you know, if you find these warmer spots and fish gravitate into them because they're shallower, you'd be surprised by putting out a few carp floaters, you know, getting some reaction. So again, I've always got some of those either with me or in the car, just in case it looks right. I see some fish topping, pop them out, and don't think, it's winter, they're all going to be on the bottom. That's a wrong assumption. They'll be where they will be, where they're comfortable, and you will take them off the surface. My question tonight, this is for hi Neil, hope you're well, hope you had a great Christmas. Adam, my question is that I saw you making flies on grips. Will there be any ready tied for zigs? Yes, in short, Adam. I mean, I'm working with a professional fly tying company on patterns that we can use within the existing hook patterns we have with grips. So predominantly things like the wide gate grips in, you know, in various nymphs and, you know, lots of different patterns. But going forward, I've got lots of ideas. But what I want to do is, I don't just want to, not being nasty or horrible here, but I think a lot of the things that are replicating naturals out there don't look like a natural. My fly fishing experience is you're mimicking. So, you know, it could be whatever, whether it be a nymph, whether it be a shrimp, you know, you really are. I'm not saying there isn't fly patterns that look kind of weird and wonderful. So that's really where I'm working on, looking to replicate. But yeah, definitely zigs. I think zigs again is something that gets very much underfished. You know, you can sit there for a 48-hour session and you stick out a zig for an hour and think, I've not caught anything, I'll go back to the bottom, when nobody else is catching. And who's to say zigs won't work in the middle of winter? Because I know they do. You know, I know they're problematic. I know they can be difficult to cast. I know they can give you, you know, very, very poor indication. But if you're up in the water and the fish are up in the water, surely you're just increasing the odds to get a bite. So yes, Adam, with that, hopefully that answers the question. Definitely, the range, the initial range will be coming out in spring, and then we'll just be moving forward with not just fly, but stuff we can use in other areas of fishing. Hi Chelsea, hope you're well. Vince, all the way from Canada, hope you and Em had a wonderful Christmas. I bet a foam daddy fly would work well as a zig. Yes, that's where I'm thinking. You know, I'm thinking of some of these, you know, some of these patterns of flies that already exist. If you can transfer them across, probably to make them a bit more robust, but still to be very, very close to the initial pattern, I'd be more confident on that. And also, because I know flavours work, you know, what I'm doing is I'm working at the moment on how I'm designing how you can actually fully flavour these flies as well for the zig world. So a double. Chelsea's been out today but blank, but it was good to get out after 8 weeks of madness at work. Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? Just get out and about, and you know, I know a lot of people think us anglers are mad, but it is just nice being out there. I've heard of people using gummy bears, wine gums. I've used wine gums historically in, like say, something that carries a flavour. They're inquisitive. But the trouble is, I'll take a bag of wine gums, there'll be one for the fish and the rest will be for me. So, yes, that's a bit of a fraught one. Where are we now? Lots of different people watching. Nothing's new. Carp anglers catching on jelly tots sweets years ago. Always give me made jellies incorporating baits. Also made jellies. I think that's Michael saying. No, nobody's saying it's. You know, like I say, you've only got to look at the old books and see things like sugar puffs being used on the surface. There's Adam. He's had a carp of Maltesers. You'd have definitely caught me last night because I ate nearly a whole box. Deer hair is a very good colour, just works well amongst floaters. There we go. Floyd, hope you're having a wonderful Christmas. I don't know, Tinny's put up something there, I'm not too sure it is. I have the same problem with fishing sweet corn. I got some fly zigs years ago, but they wasn't done properly, so I've never had a bite. Using some sponge on the fly is what I want to take the flavours and scents. Well, like I say, and that's where we'll go now, because Paul Perch has asked this question, and it has kind of been touched on over the last few weeks as well, is it's freezing. Yeah, you're right there, Chelsea, but we know different. We know different. It beats sitting there watching Netflix 24/7. But Paul said, two frosted shreddies, look at Spinner, you're showing your age now, matey. But like I say, loads of things have been used as bait and trialled as bait over the years, and loads of them been successful. And that is I suppose, the frustration for somebody like me that makes bait, when you see something that really shouldn't be, you know, in other areas, if it wasn't good quality, it wouldn't work. But good fish, a lot of times, are completely not fussy, and they just, like, you know, they're very basic things they're seeking to survive. They will look at anything potentially for food, and we'll catch them on it. What's Rod saying? After seeing the post about flies, I dusted my fly rod off last week and looked forward to get back down the trout lake. Nothing better than when they hit the fly. Well, try it on your carp lakes as well if you get permission. You'll be surprised. A slow sinking fly, you know, fishing it tight on the surface, things like that, Rod, you'll be surprised how many carp you catch. And in all the years I've done it, I've only ever known, I know, this is not said with any arrogance, I know there's a degree of skill to carp, fly fishing, but I tell you what, I can't believe people don't learn it, when, especially people around me, when they see the success and the fun I have on it. So, look, Steve Thompson, he's fresh pineapple. See how many frosted shreddies you get for £3, you tight git. Caught with a cherry off the top of my Bakewell tart. Yeah, that's probably all they're worth, aren't they? I hate the cherries on top of Bakewell tarts. If you'd herring your Bakewell tart, you'd have found me sniffing around it. But this is, and it kind of goes over the other questions I've had. But Paul Perch, winter bait, high visibility or strong sense to trigger feeding. And this is, I suppose, quite a difficult one to some extent, because there's so many variables on the go. But this is just me personally, what I'd be looking at. Scent is always going to, as I said, the cork ball. You know, I'm not catching, so I've got a fish with eyes going that way, underslung mouth, yeah, and they're coming up and they're hitting that cork ball. And why are they taking it? You know, it's basically a piece of, you know, floating soft wood. They're taking it because going back to the curiosity. So it's a bit like the cheap nasty bait that catches off the bottom because they're picking up on the flavour. And if you can create it, I think I said on my last feed, cooking the bacon. So if you think about it, if you're sat in at home, and I know I'm humanising and it's always a danger, but hopefully this kind of gives you an idea. If you're sat at home watching the box and there's a plate of bacon out in the kitchen, okay, just sat there. Now, you wouldn't know that bacon was there unless it started rotting or unless somebody started cooking it. And that's what I'm saying when it comes to baits. And that's what I'm saying when you're using things like this. You're not trying things like this. You're not trying to instigate feeding that you would get in the warmer months. What you try to do is instigating a bite. So if you look at salmon fishing, that they'll find a salmon lying in a red, and then they'll just pull a shrimp, normally a coloured shrimp, past it, and eventually it's just purely out of instinct, not out of feeding, because they're not really, I'm not 100% sure about this when they say they don't feed at all, because obviously they do, because we're catching them on shrimps. But when salmon are coming into spawn, you know, the story is they don't feed. So they're just hitting that shrimp out of instinct. And that's really where I am in the winter. And so we've got to be very careful with this visual thing. Hang on a sec, let me have a quick slurp of my... Sorry about that. What's the best way to explain? So if you think about it, if you stand in a field and get, I don't know, a golf ball, and you twat the golf ball and hit it out into the distance. Now, this is, again, I'm kind of humanising it, but I'm just trying to make sense of it. Now, if you closed your eyes when you hit that golf ball, and then you look round, and the grass was quite high, how would you see that? And that is no difference. If not, it's a lot easier probably to see that than if you were to do that with a boilie under the water with all of the debris, all of the undulations and holes and, various weeds and broken bits and things like that. So how do fish see it? And also, they're not going to see anything if it's either really murky or it's at dark at night. So therefore, my emphasis on colour, and I do use it, and I do believe in it, because it certainly works in all other areas of fishing, getting the right one for the right time of day, and those are the variables you have to muck around with. But out of the two, the visual aspect has to be lower than the scent aspect. Because the thing is, you think about it, you can stand, I don't know, in the middle of the fun fair and suddenly the old hot dog van starts cooking up hot dogs. You can't see it, but you can smell it and then can follow that smell. And that's exactly how I look with fish. You're looking to set out something, but what you don't want to do is put out a load of food for them to have choice with. So, I tend to fish for a bite at a time, in all honesty, unless I'm fishing some of the really big waters I fished abroad, where you're literally having to set your trap, you're having to put some food out there to get them going. But I'll still do the same thing. I'll cook the bacon, so I'll use glugs. I'll use, I use these a lot, and you'll see me over the next couple of months using the old reactive range on at least one, if not two, of my rods. And the reason why is because it's super boosted. Now, the other variable, I suppose, on that side is you could overboost a flavour. We'll never know, but because I treat fish independently, they'll do what they do on that particular day. Having seen what I've seen on fly fishing, when they will hit a flavour above a carp floater, the floaters that I do, the Pallatrax floaters, they are for carp. So they're actually hitting a flavour above a food source. Ian's saying boosted powers in a stick. Everything's worth trying if you're coming down the same line as you want it to actually instigate attraction. So a lot of people, possibly not of late, but over the years when I've been doing live feeds, excuse me, that's fizzy water for you. Over the live feeds, you'll have heard me use the expression sick, which is where I'm getting baits and I'm basically putting them in water, and I'm pre-soaking baits, which I'm then putting through, once they're really, really soft, and then putting them through a blender, and so I end up with, it looks like sick or porridge or whatever. And so there's no real substance to it. It's now just literally like a liquid mess. And I will put that in above, baited spots. So if I'm walking down a margin, I'm going to put a bait in, and I can put a spoon of that over the top of it. And you see it. It just clouds out the water. So all of those food signals that are in it, that's why you've got to make sure you're using bait with food, they're able to get out into the water. And they will still get out with undertone, things like that, and they will draw fish in, and that's what you're doing. But the one thing I would say as well on top of that is if you get the opportunity to pre-bait, especially in the winter, so you're building up, so you're visiting, and then when the time is right, you're then putting a bait on top of where you're pre-baiting, and fish have got used to it like a bird table. They'll come in, have the munch and go away, and then the day that you're sticking your bait right on top of that bird table, the likelihood is that's going to increase your odds. Steve is saying Carl Humphreys MBA, amazing fly caster instructor. Not heard of him, but look him up then. Anti's saying, yes, I get the colour side of things. Runs water using white krill wafters and wasn't getting bites. Switched over to a brown krill wafter and I was soon catching. And like you say, there's so many variables. Unless we can get individual fish to talk at the time of taking the bite, we're always going to have to consider variables, and that's why it's not easy to catch fish all the time. Is it on that day? You know, you take those things. Were they spooking off white for some reason? Don't know. You know, and we never will know. But then if you look at fly fishing, lure fishing, match fishing, sea fishing, all of these other forms of fishing, we're using different baits at different times to do the honours. You know, you could be sitting there catching on ragworm and somebody's next to you on lugworm not catching anything. They will swap over to lugworm straight away, they're catching, and vice versa. So it's always good to understand. And that's one of the things that I really don't believe at all in from all my fishing experiences, when you've got certain companies saying you only need one bait. You know, buy 50, 100 kilos of one bait, and that's all you need to use all year round. And I'm sorry, that's just such a flawed carp fishing mentality, when people don't realise or don't want to appreciate that all other areas of fishing, you're using not different rigs, you're using proven rigs, but what you are using is different, you know, hook baits. And you're putting them in, not only you're putting them in different positions if you're not getting bites, but if you're fishing and you know there's fish there and you're not getting a bite, you don't change rigs, you change the bait. And so for us in carp fishing, it goes across to tench and bream and, you know, things like that, catfish, you just change your hook bait. You know, and that's the key thing, to change it to try and elicit the bite. Look at when you're fly fishing, you'll go out and you'll have a little kind of wallet thing full of flies. You might have 50, 100 flies. If you're not getting anything and you know the trout are there, you might change speed of bringing it in, you might change depth. But what you will do consistently is change pattern of fly. And that's something that I think, you know, I really don't like about the industry, where it pushes people onto buying all this bait, not telling you what the food content in it. So that's a real challenge, because you could be fishing with zero content or too much content. It's like I say to people, don't buy a lot of my bait. I know it sounds a bit strange, but you don't need to, because it's so highly nutritional, the fish won't be able to eat much of it. So, you know, it's hi Simon. So it's a very kind of strange one, because you've got industry pushing you down one route, and then you've got the sport standing over here and going, well, actually, that's not the way we're all doing in all of these other areas of fishing. You know, and if you're going to say, you know, people will ring me up and say, right, Paul, I want 50 kilos of jungle. I'll be the first person to say, do you really need that much bait? And also, you're compromising. Jungle's a really good bait on its day, like any bait. But what happens if it isn't doing the business on that particular day? You've got nothing to change up. That's why I like these, because I'll take 4 or 5 different flavours of these, and if I'm not getting anything, I'll just keep on chopping and changing until I get a bite, which is what I do in all these other areas of fishing. So do think about that. If you just stick to one brand, you don't know what it's made of, one flavour, one shape, one colour, you're doing yourself injustice, and you're certainly not doing what we do in all other areas of fishing. Match fishing is a particular example. What's Callum saying? I was shown footage that no one else had of these underwater in the lake. Was that ruins? Is that really caught sitting there? Super hard lake. There was about 50 fish in there. How do I approach this structure covering mussels? Oh, so I think you're saying there's a ruin, and the fish are all holding up in the structure. You know, to be quite honest, I used to do a lot of wreck fishing when I had my boats, and you just got to be very careful. You don't want to be fishing into it. You want to be fishing as close as possible, clipped up as possible, and you don't want to be giving a lot of line. You know, you need to be right on top of your rods as soon as you get a pickup. But it's trying to get as close as you can to it without getting into it, and without giving any line, you know, potential for the fish to actually pull it into the ruin and snag you up, and that's unsafe for the fish, and you lose your gear and things like that. But it is again about being precise, and if you're able to do that via a bait boat, via taking it out somewhere other way, you know, or by local knowledge, I'll be doing that. But the closer you can get, it's like when I had my boats, you know, you go across reef or sand or whatever, and as soon as you start coming up to the wreck, which is my thing, I used to like, because I like to study the history of the wreck as well, and as soon as and then you see the fish all holding around the wreck, and the reason is that's because it's holding food, and everything is a cycle, a feed cycle there, so all the seaweed and limpets and snails and things like that are there, and everything just keeps on building up. So the closer you can get to it, the closer you're going to get to those fish. Just don't get too close. What's Andy saying? I have a bag with about 10 different hook baits in all different colours and flavours. I'm not catching. I'll change to the next flavour or colour. All I would say, Anthony, on that, again, please take this as with, you know, the love and respect, is I never ever mix flavours. You know, because at the end of the day, I'll always have my flavours separately. Because if you go mixing flavours, you don't really know what flavour, because they do pass on to it, and you can find something that works or something that doesn't work, and you never really got a clue. So I like to get things like this, and I'll get 4 or 5 little zip seal bags, you know, just tiny little ones, and I'll spray them up with different flavours, and I'll keep them. And I'm sure this OCD kind of how you know, focused I am definitely increases the odds. I've seen lots of people that open up a bucket and it's just full of all of these old shelf life baits, and they've got them in there. They don't know what they're made of. All the flavours have now mixed over. The colours have even changed in some of them. Bait is such an important thing. It's such an important thing in all areas of angling. But I do notice a trend that people are buying bait believing it's food, and then mixing it all together. And you know, what do you, if you then put it back, I'll tell you a good way of looking at it, because I'm on diet 57,000 now, but what I have been watching and got quite fixated on it over the Crimbo period is watching some of these reels and how they make like Doritos and how they make things. And I suppose I was doing myself the injustice of turning around and saying to people, oh, you want to really look how they make carp baits, and you know what's in the pellets and what, you know, and then I'm watching this stuff and I'm looking at all these things that I like and what they're actually made of. I really shouldn't go anywhere near them, and that's my new kind of thing now. So do be careful, as I say. I know I'm repeating myself here, but do be careful there. One of the bait companies I use puts out specific baits for winter, which seems to work as long as you don't overfeed. Well, you know, again, there's schools of thoughts out there. I mean, there was always a school of thought when I first started carp fishing that you never use fish meals in the winter. I mean, Adams proved that that's not true by catching on crave. And if you look at fish farming, you know, they're using, okay, different oil contents, but they're using, you know, these kind of feeds throughout, you know, throughout the cycle. I think at the end of the day, this is me just personally, because I know companies have done it over the years or tried to do it one thing or another. If you're fishing on it in the winter and you're catching on it in the winter, that means you're going to fish and catch, if that makes sense. Is it the particular flavour? Is it the particular base ingredients? A very difficult one. But at the end of the day, if it's working for you and it's a safe bait, happy days, happy days. Oh, well done, Anthony. Was separate pots. Yeah, I do keep them in separate pots. So hopefully that, you know, do focus. I can't, you know, I fish very simply, as you know, and I don't fish. I could fish much more complicated and therefore sell a lot more stuff. But I would be lying to you folks. That's not the way I fish. I fish really simply, but I do put this massive focus on bait. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first has to be fish safety and water quality safety. That has to be the priority for me. I'm not going to compromise that at all. But on the flip side of that, I want to catch fish. And so that's why I'm saying to people that, you know, it's not about Pallatrax. It's not about, you know, me telling people what to do, but just look at all other areas of fishing and understand the sympathetic kind of outlook on baits. Look at the match anglers. They don't just go and buy some scabby bait off the you know, on the shelf and things like that. They're prepping, they're doing things beforehand, they're taking their time, and you put so much time, so much effort, so much money into fishing. But if you're not realizing that if you make that extra effort, then therefore you'll be going fishing by design to catch more fish by making that extra effort. Like I say, making a sick. So I should, for tomorrow, I should have had sick on making. I haven't. Now, will I go and do it? I might do now. Because I'm as guilty as the next person. But at least I know that with my baits, we make them, and therefore we know the potential, and we know what they're doing. So when you spray your bait, do you put holes in them to help hold the flavour? What I would say, Paul, is it's a good point, and I do that with my cork ball, especially in fly fishing. What I started doing last year was putting out, cutting out little holes and then actually impregnating paste in there. So I was getting kind of double whammy as well. But what I would say is yes, you can put holes in them. But the other thing is just to scrape off the skin, and that's what I tend to do, because obviously we fish the squabs, and we'll take off the skin, because then you're removing like the outer shell and flavours. You know, these kind of flavours can really ingress. You know, what you need to make sure is these kind of flavours, these boosters are on water carrier. If they're on an oil carrier, they will just sit round and they won't do the business. The flavours won't ingress and create that attraction. So, but I like that. Would you consider doing a video on what goes into making your bait? It's a little bit of a difficult one. I get asked a lot. A lot of people ask to come into the factory, but I've got so much going on in there. It's something we want to do more, and that's one of the reasons of these live feeds. And so people can ask me all and everything about how we make bait. Obviously, there's a lot of things I do. I'd like to keep them confidential. So there's always that. It's a bit like my super kitchen in there, and there's lots of other things on the go, on the tables and things around me. But I suppose what the best thing is to do is people can always pick up the phone and ask me. The likelihood of me taking people into the factory and things like that isn't really, something on my radar. But when people say to me, I can tell you what's in our yellow sea mix, or our fish meal mix, and our red mix, I can tell you my flavours come from Pallatrax, which is one of only a few flavour houses that are animal feeds registered. And all these kind of things. I can tell you that I don't use binders. Synthetic binders. I'm using fresh egg. And people, there's rumours out there, and you have to be suspicious. Why? When people say, I don't use fresh egg, you can use, Arabic gum and things like that, which is a tree sap to create a binder to hold it all together. And it's like, no, this isn't everything. There's protein in egg, and you can utilise that to be a binder and a protein element. So, there's a lot of things that go on in bait, and the trouble is you'll see stuff slickly marketed, you'll see people buy it, and it might not be the best ingredients, but they're just buying it because they're marketed. It's marketed at them to buy. Look at this smell. I can remember, I won't name the bait company, but a very well-known, I don't call them famous, but a very well-known angler turned around and looked into the camera and said, you only need this one bait, you don't need any other bait. Ironically, he's now got his own bait range, which isn't this bait he's talking about. And that's the danger of marketing, and what can be put across. People go, oh, right, I'll buy that because they said that, or I'll buy that because it smells nice, but nobody's actually thinking about the quality. And if you go into all areas of, let's just say, food, so you go to a meal and somebody's saying, oh, this is really, really good, you want to buy this, and you eat it and it's rubbish, you don't return. But when you're fishing, you can keep on buying the same old thing. And is it any good? I'm not saying all bait's rubbish out there, far from it. There's some really good bait companies out there like DNA and CC Moores, Dynamite's animal feed regulated, people like that. So there's some good bait companies. All I will say is I actually don't make bait. I make animal feed, kind of a food source. So the fact is I make it into an anti-eject shape, and we use it for that reason. I'm actually not following the trends of the bait market, if that makes sense. What's that? Someone I met today uses the Pango glug, I think it's called, a mainline. He says no point in glugging your bait overnight, got to do it over 4 months. So yeah, I totally disagree with that, Callum. I mean, that's the trouble. You'll get lots of different opinions out there on lots of different things, and there's so many base things there that this person is not necessarily thinking of. What is he glugging? What's it made of? What are the glugs made of? What will they do to ingress? There's all these different things you need to look at. I think, of course you can layer baits and flavour them, but, at the end of the day, the most go back to the cork ball. I'm not sitting there layering flavour upon flavour upon flavour. I'm making it intense at those casts, and then after 4 or 5 casts, I'll reboost it. So I think you need to be very careful on all this stuff, because that's where fishing's gone. There's so many places, and so many people are telling you so many different things. the angler must just sit there and go, oh, where do I start? And that's why I've just gone full circle back to basics, back to quality baits in the right place, unobtrusive tactics. And I think for what is still, you know, in the big scheme of things, a small company, the amount of fish we catch and the regular, you know, way we catch fish, it goes a long way to proving that we have got common sense tactics, because that's really where I am, it's common sense. But I think we just need to be very careful of what influencers are saying, and don't take it as read. Do your own, question everything, assume nothing, if that makes sense. Cliff saying, I always trim the bait to release more flavour and hold the spray better. Round baits are always better trimmed anyway to make them an odd shape, so it's more difficult for fish to eject. Hence Pallatrax squad, and is less suspicious. With you there all the way, Cliff? How many eggs a week do you get through? Oh, in the summer, lots of eggs, lots and lots and lots and lots, litres and litres of it. But it's, and the trouble is, it's really expensive. It's almost like a commodity. It goes up. I can remember when the EU changed, and rightly so, they changed some regulations to make the where the chickens in these egg farms, if you want to call them that, to make it more safe for better conditions for the chickens. Literally, egg prices went like doubled overnight, because we were then having to pay for all the new nesting stations and things like that. So it's quite a volatile market, but you'll never ever beat it, in my humble opinion. Everything else there that is being used is synthetic, and I don't go down that route, as you know. Palmer's made paste in his lives before, which is basically a boil that just hasn't been boiled. Yeah, pastes are fantastic. You know, again, I would definitely say those are the kind of things that are edges all year round, because you get something that's going to give you a flavour leakage straight from the off because it hasn't been boiled. So, got to love it when they say this is the best bait on the market. Yeah, I think, you know, you could say, I suppose, if everybody threw their hat into the ring and told everybody what their bait's made out of, get your own chickens. It was a thought at one time, Matt, as you know, and we could see the ingredients, because that would show what was the best ingredients. But I think, you know, what is the best bait is, I've seen some huge fish being caught on the most outrageous rubbish bait, and I've seen really good bait not catch, you know, anything. So it's always a bit of a nightmare and a bit of a minefield. So that's why I would always suggest to people, just always find out the best quality ingredients, and then it's down to you to be putting in the right place at the right time. No, I don't use eggshell in any of the baits, Miles. I'm not a fan of this crunch value, where, you know, the fish find it and crunch it because they like it and things like that. I just, yeah, I go down, I'm very, very much down the fish farming route. I'm always suspicious these days. This is Cliff, pushed by sponsored anglers. I was a well-known fisher in Thailand, and it turned out with a branded bait that was pushed by a well-known angler at video at the venue. It was shot when he was pulling a big carp. Reality was he was using a house bait, but had bags on to show them, think it was a sponsor's branded. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I've been in this industry a long time, and there's all kinds of stuff goes on, and some of it probably pushes the boundaries, where people are saying they're catching on company X when they're really caught on a worm and things like that, allegedly. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like anything marketing, we always need to be suspicious, don't we? We always need to think, is it? And if it is, can I prove it? But look, I've gone over my time as always. Let me have a look. No, I haven't. I've still got 5 minutes. I do apologise. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to turn round and we're going to draw yes, just to finish off what I was saying about Cliff there. I could give you some horror stories. Perhaps the book will reveal all, but I've seen some shocking things in 30 years that yeah, that would disturb many angler, I think. But anyway, let me turn round, and this little bunch of goodies. So this was the Christmas prize. There will be another, yeah, one of our bi-monthly prizes going up in the next couple of days. So watch that out on the team page. So you've got all kinds of things there, from bait needles to hangers to rigs to stains to hook grips, catapult. And here we go, big drum roll. The winner is Sam Roth. Sam Roth, we know Sam. Sam fishes down here. So Sam, you've done well, my friend. Congratulations. Happy Christmas. Sam Roth wins this little bundle. So if you're here, Sam, do reach out and make sure I got your right details. If not, we will hunt you down wherever you may be. So congratulations, Sam. Nice little bunch of goodies there. And the winner, the live feed winner, is... He'll be very happy with this as it happens, because it's a bit of a Crave bundle. Adam. Well done, Adam. You win the Crave Reactive, the hooks, the sticker, and the Crave booster. So, yeah, happy days, happy days. Well done. Well done to Adam and Sam. And like I say, yes, Adam, in there, get in there. I'll get those out as soon as, well, we are open again tomorrow, but I'm not sure what the couriers are doing. So I will get those off to you as soon as possible. The next live feed will be over on the main page next Sunday. Just an update, as I did touch on it a month or so ago. We are looking to, with Keith's help, because I wouldn't have a clue, we are looking at using a new facility called Restream, so we can stream across different platforms. So we're looking into that soon. We'll be having more guests this year. If anybody, team member, wants to come on as a guest and has a chat with me and chat to anybody, always reach out, send me a message. That's not a problem at all. The more the merrier. Like I say, it's lots happening in 2026, and most of it I have to shout out to this team. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing now and going in the direction, and you know, it's humbling, to be quite honest, the amount of effort that goes on around me and behind the scenes, the amount of support we're getting, be it from fisheries, be it from individuals or collectives. There was never a hidden agenda. Okay, we're going up against an industry that has a different, you know, mindset to me. All I will ever say, not in my defence, but in kind of, you know, realising what I'm about, there is no hidden agenda. You know, I do believe we can catch a lot of fish safely without doing a lot of the stuff we're now being told. And that's not an arrogance. It's just all I would say to anybody. Just look at other areas of fishing. If the way we're being taught to fish now is so successful, why isn't it within, like this, say, match fishing? And if you just say, you know, I think match fishing is one of those places that you can say that the angler is good. He or she who actually catches week in, week out and frames, that is a good angler. Okay, somebody who's heavily sponsored, gets rights to go fishing 24/7, free bait, free this, you know, you name it, and catches some big fish. I'm not taking anything away from them, but it's not a realistic scenario. And what I am saying is, there's all these other examples of fishing which don't fit into the modern way of fishing. You know, look at slack lines, look at dumping leads, look at sharpening hooks, look at all of these things that the trade is promoting and the trade is selling us this stuff. I would just be a bit more suspicious, a bit more cautious about it, because I think there's two things that lose here, is the angler and the environment. Just have that. You know, go into the new year thinking, you know, by changing and tweaking a few things, and with no arrogance, do listen to the common sense approach that Pallatrax brings. I can promise you, by following it, you will catch more fish, and you'll understand why you're catching more fish, because we're literally revisiting and not overcomplicating and not confusing. But on that note, I will say good night, stay safe. Have a wonderful, happy new year and a prosperous and healthy 2026. I will see you again next week. Thanks for your support, as I say, and all the best. Take care. Good night.